I can still remember the first time I met Mr. Hauth. It was 1982. He was a freshman in college, already carving out his path, and I was a senior in high school, still figuring out mine. We both worked at McDonald's, shared the same circles, the same interests, but there was one thing that clearly belonged to him, not me: Taekwondo. He was a blue belt then, and I would sit on the sidelines, watching his classes and competitions. I admired the discipline, the structure, even the intensity of it all. But it wasn't for me. I was perfectly content being an observer. That changed in 1986 after we got married. Marriage has a way of shifting priorities. I realized quickly that I couldn't get enough time with him, and somehow the simplest solution felt like the biggest leap. I stepped onto the mat. I put down whatever else I was doing and joined Taekwondo. He gave me the same pitch he gave everyone else: polished, convincing, almost rehearsed. I noticed that, but I didn't mind. I loved him, and that was enough. Still, I set my boundaries. I'll quit at green belt, I told him. I don't want to spar. Then later, I'll quit at red belt. I'm not breaking boards. And finally, I'll quit at black belt. I don't want to teach. I had my exit points clearly mapped out. But something funny happens when you start walking a path you swore you wouldn't stay on. You begin to change. I found that I loved forms. There was something about the precision, the rhythm, the quiet discipline that pulled me in. Sparring, though, that was another story. I remember one of my very first sparring sessions. He paired me with a black belt, telling me we were just going to play a game of tag. And for a while, that's exactly what it felt like. Light, fun, almost effortless. Then I made a mistake. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of a group of football players walking by. Just a second, one quick glance. But when I turned back, impact! An axe kick landed square on my nose. I dropped to my knees, hands flying to my face, the world suddenly loud and quiet all at once. He rushed over, telling me to take my hands away. I hesitated, then slowly pulled them back. Someone nearby said they heard a crack. He looked at me and said, almost casually, "I think it's broken." I didn't find that funny, not in that moment. The pain hit, the realization followed, and then the tears came. It wasn't just my nose. I felt like something deeper had been shaken, like I had been broken right along with it. But I wasn't. Time passed, and I started to understand the game. Not just the movements, but the mindset. I learned how to stand my ground, how to read people, how to respond when someone stepped onto the mat, thinking they had something to prove, because they often did. There was one black belt who came into town from Sacramento. Before class even started, he made it clear he would only spar men, not women. My husband just smiled and said, "Warm up with my wife first, then you can spar me." We stepped onto the mat. Halfway through the match, he stopped abruptly, frustration written all over him. "Stop hitting me," he snapped. I looked at him and said, as calmly as I could, "Stop letting me." The room went quiet. He didn't have a response, not one he could say out loud. He bowed off the floor and walked out. We never saw him again. Then there was Kevin, big guy, newly minted black belt, confident, maybe a little too confident. During our match, he grinned and said, "Is that all you got, Mrs. Hauth?" Something in me shifted. With the crowd watching, the energy in the room building, I answered him, not with words, but with action. I caught him high, more than once, clean, controlled, undeniable. When class ended, I didn't think much of it. But the next week, There he was again. I smiled and said, "Kevin, how about another round?" He shook his head immediately. "No, that dog ain't gonna hunt." And just like that, I understood something important. I had found my place. I never fell in love with tournaments. Board breaking never became my passion. And sparring? I respected it, but it was never what drew me in. What I truly loved was something else entirely. I loved challenging assumptions. I loved stepping onto the mat and quietly dismantling the idea that women were somehow less tough, less capable, less dangerous, because once that bell rang, none of that mattered. Only skill did.